The silent departure. The grand hall of the Galactic Council glowed with silver light. Alien delegates filled the vast chamber, their voices a low murmur of politics, trade, and endless disputes. Every race in the council had its place. Tall, crystalline, beings shimmering like glass, scaled warriors with sharp armor and floating minds wrapped in liquid light. At the center stood the great round table, where decisions that shaped the galaxy were made, and among them, there were always humans. For decades, humanity had been a part of these gatherings, sometimes loud, sometimes defiant, always bold. Their section of the chamber was never quiet. They argued, laughed, and sometimes shouted, but they were always there, shaping the future of the galaxy with their strange mix of courage and stubbornness. But today, the seats of humanity stood empty. At Tuam, first no one noticed. A council of hundreds could not pause for one missing delegation. The meeting began with routine reports, border skirmishes, resource disputes, the usual chorus of complaints. But soon whispers began. The silver chairs reserved for Earth's representatives remained untouched, their lights dim. "Where are the humans?" asked a delegate from the Vayari, her voice sharp. She was used to clashing with the human ambassador, used to his sarcastic replies. The silence unsettled her. "They are late," said another. "Humans are always late." But as the minutes passed, no footsteps echoed in the chamber, no voice interrupted the monotony. The space where humanity belonged remained cold, hollow. Finally, the Speaker of the Council raised his many-eyed head. "Send a message to the Terran delegation," he ordered. The message went out. It received no reply. Whispers grew louder, stretching into unease. Some delegates laughed it off. Others frowned, remembering how unusual it was. For all their chaos, humans never ignored the council. They thrived on conflict and debate. Silence was not their way. Then came the first report. Kride, Andari scout vessel reported that the human embassy on Arcanus was deserted. No guards, no diplomats, no staff. The building stood silent, its lights shut down. Confusion spread like fire. A Cathari general slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Impossible. They cannot simply vanish." Another report arrived, this time from the Orion homeworld. Their human embassy, too, had been abandoned overnight. Every system wiped, every device powered down, every trace of activity erased. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted over one another, voices clashing in a storm of disbelief. Are they hiding something? Is this a trick? Perhaps they are preparing for war. The speaker struck the table, forcing silence. Enough. Humans do not move in silence. They do not vanish without words. But deep inside, he wondered. A third report followed, this time from the outer rim. Human outposts, research stations, even colonies shared with other species, all were suddenly gone. Not destroyed, not invaded, simply left behind. The strangest detail chilled the chamber. Every human world had cut all communication channels. Civilian and military frequencies alike went dark. Trade networks collapsed. Human ships had recalled their crews and vanished from alien ports, leaving nothing but empty docks. The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, could not hear the voice of humanity. The silence grew heavier. Delegates shifted uncomfortably. These were not just allies or rivals vanishing. Humanity was deeply tied to every corner of the galaxy. They built ships for the Yalari. They mined resources for the Fexar. They mediated endless wars between stubborn factions. Their absence felt like a piece of the galaxy itself had been ripped away. One delegate whispered what many feared to say aloud. What if they know something we do not? The words spread like a cold wind. What if humanity's silence was not an accident, but a warning? The speaker's voice trembled despite his authority. We must investigate. We must know why they left. But in the shadows of the chamber, unease thickened. For years, many had mocked humanity, calling them reckless, arrogant, too young to sit among the stars. And yet it was humanity who had built bridges, fought for peace, and dared to stand against ancient powers. If they had chosen to walk away, it was not without reason. Reports kept coming. Entire human fleets were gone from shared patrol routes. Colonies had shut down their gates. On some worlds, human cities stood eerily empty, as though their people had vanished overnight. The council chamber grew cold. Every alien there felt something unusual pressing against them. Not anger, not fear. Something worse, an unknown silence. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy realized what it felt like without humanity's presence. No laughter, no arguments, no stubborn defiance. Just silence. The silence of a species that had chosen to leave without a word. And in that silence, a single thought echoed in the minds of the council. Why? The missing voices. The galaxy did not sleep that night. From the inner core to the farthest rim, messages rushed through the networks of the stars. Every species sent urgent transmissions, demanding answers. Why had humanity vanished? Why had their embassies, fleets, and colonies gone silent? But there was no answer. Not a single voice came back from Earth or its colonies. In the Grand Hall, the council reconvened. The chamber felt heavier than before, as though the air itself carried the weight of humanity's absence. Delegates spoke over one another, their words cracking with unease. Their outposts on Ventari Prime are empty, not a trace of life, one delegate announced. The humans destroyed their own communication systems on Koran Station, said another. Not damaged, not attacked, destroyed by their own hand. The speaker's many eyes narrowed. Why would they erase themselves? A deep unease filled the chamber. Humans had always been bold. Too bold, some would say. They argued when others stayed silent. They fought wars when others surrendered. They rushed into the unknown when others hesitated. But they had never, in all their history, chosen silence. The silence was not natural. It was deliberate. Alien investigators were dispatched. Fleets of scouts combed through human territory. What they found chilled them further. On Luna, the moon colony closest to Earth, the Great Dome stood empty. Lights were shut down, streets were abandoned, entire districts silent as tombs. The life support systems were carefully shut down, not sabotaged. Whoever had lived there had left in an orderly way, as though they knew exactly where to go. On Mars, once bustling with human trade, the ports were locked, the ships gone, and every terminal wiped clean. Even the records of passengers and cargo had been deleted. It was as if Mars had been preparing for this exodus for years. When the scouts reached Earth itself, they found the planet wrapped in a heavy shield. The old transmissions, music, chatter, broadcasts were gone. Earth's surface was hidden under a vast interference field, blocking every scan. The blue planet still glowed in the distance, but its voice had been silenced. The council trembled. Humanity had sealed itself off from the galaxy. In the chamber, the arguments turned to fear. This is an act of war, thundered the scaled general of the Drakari. His spines flared in fury. No race abandons the council in this way unless they are preparing for something. Perhaps they are building weapons behind that shield. Or perhaps they are fleeing something, countered the Vayari delegate. Her translucent form flickered in unease. What if they discovered a threat? What if they left us to face it alone? The words struck the chamber like lightning. A threat. It explained everything. The erasure of records, the sudden silence, the sealed planet. But if there was such a danger, why had humans not warned the galaxy? The council's speaker asked the question no one wanted to voice. Or, did they not trust us enough to tell us? The chamber fell silent. For years, the council had mocked humanity. They were called reckless, short-lived, emotional. Their warnings about threats in the outer dark were dismissed. Their explorers were accused of arrogance. Their wars were condemned as primitive. And yet those same humans had been the ones to unite feuding systems, to rebuild ruined colonies, to create new trade routes where no one else dared. Now they were gone. And the galaxy, for the first time, felt smaller. Beyond the chamber, Panic spread among the common people of alien worlds. On the trade hubs, merchants discovered that shipments of human-made technology had vanished. Starship engines designed by human engineers could no longer be repaired. Colonies that depended on Terran food shipments began to starve. Humanity had not only left the Council, they had pulled out their roots from every corner of the galaxy, and with those roots gone, entire civilizations began to feel the cracks. On the frozen colonies of the Yalari, power grids failed without human technicians to maintain them. On the mining worlds of the Fexar, machines built by human hands broke down. Even the great fleets of the Drakari faltered. Their weapons depended on human-designed stabilizers. The galaxy had laughed at humanity. Now, in their silence, it wept for them. In the council chamber, the first whispers of regret began. "We should not have ignored them," said the Veari. "They warned us before," muttered a Cathari officer. "When they spoke of shadows in the outer rim, that we dismissed them as fools." The speaker closed his many eyes, feeling the weight of truth. Humanity had not simply vanished. They had chosen to leave. They had left in silence because words were no longer enough. Still, a question lingered in every corner of the chamber. Where did they go? And in the silence that followed, another thought crept into alien minds. If humanity had left, they had gone somewhere. They were building something, preparing something. Whatever it was, the galaxy was not meant to see it yet. The voices of humanity were missing. But soon the galaxy feared they would return, and when they did, nothing would be the same again. The regret the council chamber no longer roared with voices. It whispered. It trembled. Days had passed since the silence began, yet not a single human voice had returned. No ambassadors, no traders, no explorers. It was as though an entire species had stepped away from the galaxy and locked the door behind them. The speaker called yet another emergency session. Delegates arrived with tired eyes and heavier hearts. For many, this was not only politics anymore, it was survival. The Veari delegate spoke first, her glass-like form flickering with unease. "Entire fleets have stalled. Without human engineers, our ships cannot cross the trade lanes." The Fexar ambassador slammed his metallic fist onto the table. "Our mining colonies have collapsed. Every machine, every drill, every lifter was designed by Terran hands. Without them, we are helpless." Even the proud Drakari general lowered his scaled head. "Our weapons cannot fire. Their stabilizers were Terran. We mocked them for selling us their devices, yet we depended on them more than we knew." The chamber filled with silence again, heavier than before. Each word spoken was a wound, each report another reminder of how deeply humanity had been woven into the galaxy's survival. Regret spread like poison. One by one, council members recalled their history with humans. The Yalari remembered how humans rebuilt their cities after a great storm destroyed their world. They had arrived unasked, with fleets of relief ships, bringing food and power cells. The Yalari had mocked them as sentimental, and now those same supplies were gone. The Andari remembered when pirates raided their colonies. It was humans who stood against them, reckless and stubborn, even when no treaty demanded it. The Andari had dismissed it as human arrogance, but now they wished those reckless fighters were still by their side. The Cathari remembered the debates, how humans shouted in the chamber, how they argued against war, how they refused to bend. They had been called undisciplined, emotional, foolish, and yet without their voices the council felt empty, hollow, weaker. Every race had a memory of mocking humans. Every race now felt the sting of regret. Rumors grew outside the chamber. Ordinary citizens of alien worlds asked questions their leaders could not answer. Why did the humans leave? Did we drive them away? Will they ever return? But the darkest rumor spread fastest of all. What if they never forgave us? On some worlds, fear turned to worship. Shrines appeared where humans once lived, candles glowing in front of empty embassies. On others, fear turned to panic. Riots broke out, markets crashed, fleets fractured. The galaxy had mocked humanity as fragile. Now it realized who was fragile without them. The Council attempted diplomacy. They sent fleets to the edge of Terran space, broadcasting endless messages of peace, apology, and begging for dialogue. Not a single signal was answered. The shields around Earth remained impenetrable, and the silence endured. The speaker sat in his chamber long after the others had left. His many eyes stared at the empty chairs where humanity once sat. For years, those chairs had been loud, filled with laughter, arguments, bold words that made the chamber shake. Now they were the quietest place in the room. He remembered one human, Ambassador, a woman with fire in her voice. She had once warned the Council, "You call us reckless, but one day you will learn what silence means when it comes from us. If we stop speaking, it is because you refuse to listen." At the time, they had laughed. Now her words returned like a ghost. The galaxy began to break. Alliances faltered. Wars that humans once mediated returned with fury. Old enemies clashed, again without Terran diplomats to stand between them. Systems that depended on Terran trade collapsed into famine. Whole sectors turned dark, unable to function without human technology. For centuries, the Council had believed humans were the youngest, the weakest, the loudest children at their table. But now, stripped of them, the galaxy realized the truth. Humanity had been the glue, the fire, the spark that held them together, and their silence was louder than any war. The regret grew unbearable. Delegates stood in the chamber, not to argue but to confess. The Fexar ambassador bowed his metallic head. "We insulted them. We called them greedy when they offered us trade." The Vayari delegate's voice cracked like breaking glass. "We mocked their music. We mocked their culture. We called them primitive, even as we built our cities with their designs." The Drakari general's claws trembled. "We called them reckless warriors. But without their courage, we cannot even defend our borders." The speaker spoke last, his many eyes heavy with shame. "We thought their words were noise. Now we would give anything to hear that noise again." For the first time in the history of the Council, the chamber fell into complete silence. Not a single voice dared to break it. The silence of regret was heavier than war. But somewhere beyond the silence, in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, human fleets moved in shadows. Great ships, larger and stronger than before, glided through uncharted space. Their lights were dim, their engines quiet, their purpose hidden. Humanity had not disappeared. They had chosen their silence, and soon, the galaxy would learn why. The first signs. The galaxy had grown restless. Silence had turned to fear, and fear was now shifting into something worse, paranoia. Weeks had passed since humanity's departure. Entire sectors of trade lay in ruin. Fleets stumbled without Terran engineers. Colonies starved without Terran food shipments. And across alien worlds, ordinary citizens whispered the same question again and again. Where did the humans go? The Council had no answer, but the first signs soon arrived, signs that humanity had not disappeared, only stepped out of sight. It began at the edge of Drakari space. A patrol frigate, scanning the borders, detected a distortion in the void. First, the crew assumed it was a solar flare or an anomaly. But as they drew closer, their sensors froze. Something massive was moving in the dark. The frigate's captain squinted at the displays. "That's a fleet. But those aren't Council signatures." Dozens of enormous shapes glided past the edge of detection, silent as shadows. Their hulls did not match any known design. Sleek, angular, wrapped in black alloys that absorbed light. Their engines burned with a strange glow, faint yet steady, as if they consumed the void itself. The crew held their breath. They were human ships, but nothing like the ones the galaxy had known. Word spread quickly. The Drakari report reached the Council within hours. "They are building war fleets," growled the Drakari general, slamming his clawed hand against the table. "This is their plan. They left to prepare for war." "No," countered the Vayari delegate, trembling. "We do not know their purpose. Perhaps they flee from something greater. But the debate only deepened the fear. More sightings followed. In the outer rim, a mining station reported an entire asteroid stripped of its metals. In a single night, no traces of mining lasers were found, only smooth scars across the rock. Precision work, far beyond what the Council fleets could achieve. In the Cathari sector, a trading convoy vanished without a distress call. When search parties arrived, they found the convoy's escorts floating dead in space. Their systems had been disabled, not destroyed, not burned, shut down as though a master hand had simply turned them off. The cargo was gone. Whispers spread like fire. It's them, the humans. They are gathering resources. They are building something vast. Panic gripped the chamber. Should we prepare for war? Asked one ambassador. With what ships? Snapped another. Half our fleets are already useless without their technology. The speaker raised his many eyes, but for once he had no words. He remembered how humans had once begged the Council to listen to their warnings, about shadows in the outer void, about signals no one else believed were real. At the time, the Council had laughed. They had dismissed humans as paranoid explorers who feared the dark. Now, as reports of ghost fleets and silent mining operations piled higher, the speaker wondered if the humans had been right all along. Outside the chamber, ordinary citizens felt the tremors. Alien merchants complained of Terran-built engines failing, leaving ships stranded. Colonists cursed the silence of Earth, praying for Terran aid that would never come. And in the dark corners of alien cities, cults began to rise, cults that worshipped humanity as prophets who had seen the truth. They left because they knew, whispered one cult leader on a distant moon. They are not gone. They prepare for the storm we cannot see. Then came the most chilling report of all. A lone scout ship from the Yalari ventured too close to the edge of Terran space. Its crew recorded something no one could explain. A massive station hanging in the void larger than any council city. It was not a shipyard. It was not a colony. It was something new. Its surface bristling with strange towers, its heart pulsing with energy unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The scout could not approach. The moment they drew near, their systems shut down. Engines failed. Weapons froze. The ship drifted powerless until an unseen force pushed them back into open space. Before the scout fled, one final image was captured. The symbol of humanity, etched across the station's surface. The Council gasped when the image was displayed in the chamber. It was not a declaration of war. It was not a warning. It was a statement. Humanity was no longer part of the Council. They were something else now, something greater. Fear settled. In the chamber like a heavy shadow, the Drakari general whispered almost to himself. They are not leaving us. They are leaving what we were. The speaker spoke at last, his voice slow and trembling. Perhaps this was never about abandoning us. Perhaps it was about preparing for what comes next. His words hung in the air. For the first time, the Council understood that their regret might not only be about losing humanity, it might be about what humanity was becoming, something vast, silent, and far beyond their control. And in that realization, a darker fear grew. If humans were preparing for something in the void, then what exactly were they preparing against? The return. The Council chamber stood in silence. For weeks they had debated, feared, and regretted. But still no answer had come from Earth. Humanity had vanished, leaving only shadows and rumors behind. And then one day, the silence broke. It was not with a fleet or an attack. It was with a single signal. Across every channel of the galaxy, from the richest core worlds to the poorest mining colonies, a voice suddenly echoed. It was not an alien tongue. It was human, calm, steady, unshakable. You never listened. Now you will understand. The words sent a chill through every being who heard them. Moments later, the void lit up. At the edge of the galaxy, where only the bravest explorers once ventured, a fleet appeared. Not just ships, cities of steel and fire. Human vessels, vast and silent, emerged from the dark like giants. Their hulls shimmered with black alloys, their weapons hidden but humming with restrained power. The Council watched in disbelief. These were not the fragile Terran cruisers they had once known. These were something new, something evolved. Humanity had not just prepared, they had transformed. Panic erupted in the chamber. Some shouted for defenses to be raised. Others begged for diplomacy. The speaker only stared, his many eyes wide with awe. They were silent because they were building this, he whispered, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. But then the truth struck harder. The humans were not pointing their weapons at the Council worlds. They were facing outward, toward the void beyond the galaxy. A Council scout vessel confirmed what none wanted to believe. Something was coming from the darkness outside known space. Signals, vast, alien, incomprehensible. A force older than the Council itself. The silence of humanity had been preparation. Not abandonment, not war, survival. The Council begged for answers. Finally, a second human transmission came. We warned, you of shadows in the outer rim. You laughed. We spoke of dangers in the dark. You ignored us. So we left in silence to prepare. For all of us. The chamber trembled. Regret turned to shame. The Vayari delegate whispered, they left not to destroy us, but to save us. And then the human fleets moved. Great armadas lit the stars with their engines, forming walls of steel at the galaxy's edge. Massive stations powered up, glowing like suns. Their signals rippled across the void, challenging whatever threat stirred beyond. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy realized something it had forgotten. Humanity was not reckless noise. Humanity was the shield, the fire, the force that dared to stand where no one else could. The Council members bowed, their heads. Their regret was heavier than ever. They had mocked humanity, dismissed them, underestimated them. And yet, it was humanity that now stood between the galaxy and the coming storm. The speaker addressed the chamber, his voice shaking. We thought their silence was abandonment, but it was sacrifice. They prepared in silence because we would not listen. Now our survival depends on them. No one argued, no one dared. Outside the chamber, alien citizens watched the skies. For the first time since the silence began, they saw human ships again, vast, terrifying, beautiful. And instead of fear, many felt hope. Hope that the humans had not left them behind completely. Hope that humanity would not let the galaxy fall. The final message arrived across every world. A simple declaration from Earth itself, its voice strong and unyielding. We are humanity. We do not speak in noise anymore. We speak in silence, in preparation, in strength. We will face the darkness beyond the stars. And when the storm comes, you will remember this day. The message ended. The silence returned, but this time, the silence was not hollow. It was heavy with meaning. It was the silence of soldiers waiting. It was the silence of shields raised. It was the silence before the storm. The Council would forever call it the Day of Regret. But across alien worlds, ordinary beings gave it another name. The day humanity returned. And in that return, the galaxy finally understood what it had lost, and why it could never afford to lose humanity again.